Hi, my name is Mendi Spencer, and I'm a teacher here at the high school. And your English teachers asked me to answer some questions because I recently published a children's book on Amazon. And I believe you're going to be starting some stories geared towards children soon in your classes. I have two officially published and for sale. The first one that I wrote is called The Adventures of a Robot Vacuum, The Ransom. And then the second one is called The Sleep Squad. You can see this one looks like a beginner book. This one looks a little more professional. And I have two more books that are going to be published this year, and I think they're even going to be better than these. One book is called The Teacher's Lounge, and there's a student at Grain Valley that is illustrating that one with me. And then the next one was a book that I was hired to write by a speech pathologist who saw this book and reached out and asked me to write a book for her. I never dreamed I would publish a book, and my very first story just happened. It was based on a true event. Miss Lever, who teaches Spanish, she had a Roomba that would vacuum at night. The sub let the door open and a Roomba got out. So when she got to school the next day, her Roomba was gone. She asked the teachers to look around the building for it. And then a few hours later, someone dropped off a ransom note that said, "We have your vacuum and you have to do certain things if you want to get your vacuum back." I thought it was a funny situation. And when some events would happen during a day, I would just write some lines, some rhyming lines to a story to capture those events. And I thought it'd be entertaining to the staff, and I would email those lines, and more would happen, and I'd write more and email those lines out to the staff. And whenever she had her Roomba back, I had a complete story, and people encouraged me to publish it. And I had to do a lot of editing still, even though I had that story completely written. But I decided, why not? Let's see what happens. And now I have lots of books written, just not illustrated yet. So I definitely feel like this will be something I will continue to do. I probably have 5 more books written about Roombas, and I have some additional books that I'll share with you here in a little bit. A little bit about my writing process here. So maybe I have some ideas that'll help you when it comes to writing your children's books. How do I come up with my ideas? My ideas just come to me in the strangest times. Like when I'm doing dishes, I might be thinking about a book and I'll get an idea, and it's the idea that I needed for my beginning. Because maybe I had an idea for a book, I just didn't know how to start it. Or maybe I needed an ending, maybe a heartwarming ending, or what is the lesson that's going to be learned? And then what is the big dramatic event that's going to happen in my book? So these ideas just come to me whenever I'm just driving in the car or folding laundry. And I think if you think about your book throughout the day, then you're going to get ideas as well, just kind of happen organically. But I noticed that most of my ideas that come have to do with maybe hot topics or current events. For example, Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift. They gave me an idea for a book. I just sent my manuscript to both of them. I get lots of ideas from funny TikToks and videos on Instagram. So, for example, there was a video where a Roomba gets outside and that's captured by the Ring camera. I had lots of people that reached out to me and said, "Hey, we have an idea for your second book. There was a Roomba that got outside." Funny thing is I'd already written that book. I just didn't have it illustrated and published yet. And so that's where you can see like something that happened on a video is a great subject to put in a children's book. You just silly things that happen to you throughout the day are great ideas. For example, a cat jumped in my lap before I went to record, and I couldn't turn down the TV. And I thought this could be a funny story because I think other people can relate when a cat jumps in your lap, like it's the rule, like you can't move. So I thought, what if there's this kid and his cat gets in his lap, and then all of a sudden, like all these really neat opportunities start showing themselves, and this kid can't go and do those things because there's a cat on his lap. Again, just keep yourself open for ideas. Something makes you laugh, something is entertaining, then you can put that in a book, and you can have a book that's going to make people laugh or a book that's going to entertain people. Think about books that you love as a child, and sometimes they'll inspire a story. And thinking about things that happened whenever you were young also. So the book that I recently wrote or started uh, is about a snow day because we had a snow day. We couldn't go anywhere. And I thought it would be, I started thinking about whenever I was little, I was bored on snow days. I'd go out and play in the snow and we dig these long snow tunnels. So how about I have a kid and he goes outside and starts digging a tunnel and he just keeps digging and digging and digging. And what's going to happen as he digs a long tunnel and comes up to the surface, like where might he be? And so I kind of have some outlandish places he ends up tunneling to, like New York and Mount Rushmore and Santa Claus, Indiana, and Australia. And so, again, that idea just kind of came to me naturally. When you get ideas for books, write them down immediately or you're going to forget them. I have an email that I just reply to when I get an idea for a book. And someday when I'm bored, I might sit down and look through that email and say, hey, I'm going to write a book about that. That's going to be a good one. And so just to write down those ideas for a book whenever you get them. Now, when you decide that you think you're going to write a book about this idea, as more ideas come to you, start writing them down, but start writing them down in a way that your ideas are starting to organize themselves into a beginning and a middle and an end. So here is my book about tunneling in the snow. And you can see that some of the things that I have written down here, it's not clean text, and some might rhyme, but they don't rhyme very well. And I need to go back and I'll eventually develop them. But I like to build lots of ideas before I sit down and start writing some final text here. So you can see that I have a lot. And you can note that I started thinking about, what towns are we going to tunnel to? What are we going to see when we're there? And so on. So start writing down those ideas. And the more ideas you add, eventually you have a beginning, you have a middle, and you have an end. Now, if you are having a hard time coming up with content for your beginning and your middle and your end, run your idea by your friends, classmates, your family members, because they can come up with great ideas. And that is just what you needed to maybe connect this point to this point in your book. How did I develop my characters? They just happened organically for what I need in that book. So sometimes you might come up with a character because you need some drama. So you need an antagonist. If you want some humor, a silly character, you can use animals to be silly. A confidant, so that this person can maybe share information with another person in their story and inform the reader at the same time. And keep in mind, though, the more characters you have, the more illustrations that you're going to have to do. And sometimes it's very difficult to draw people well. So keep that in mind. As your story develops, I think you'll find that your target audience will naturally show itself. When I started writing The Sleep Squad, I realized very quickly this is a bedtime story because this is about sheep helping kids fall asleep. And I started thinking of the ages of kids where they have a parent at bedtime reading a book to them. And then I geared my book towards that. So I imagine kids are having books read to them by their parents whenever they are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But probably as you get older than that, your kids are going to be reading different books. They're going to be reading books to themselves. They're going to be reading chapter books. So I wrote to that age. So 2 up to probably about age 6 or 7. You also need to consider, if you're writing an informative book, the age, the vocab that you're going to be able to use. The book I was hired to write talks about development of children's mouths, and we want to make sure that there are things right very early so that those things can be corrected by OMTs and speech pathologists. So that book I geared toward very young kids so that we're reading to very young kids and the parents are getting some information that's going to help them decide, like, do I need to take my child to a speech pathologist, etc. So that book, I'll just read you the first lines of it real quick, and you can see that it's definitely for a younger audience here. So we are teaching them about kind of the parts of the mouth and why your tongue needs to go in certain places so that your mouth is going to develop correctly. So your face has parts on the outside, a nose, two lips, and big round eyes. But what about the parts inside? To see them, one must open wide. So definitely younger readers are going to be reading that story. Let's talk about, okay, so here's a funny scenario. I'm going to have to hit pause because this cat is locked in my daughter's bedroom and is crying, and you can probably hear it in the back. So there's an idea for a book for you. Let me hit pause. I'll be right back. And here's the cat. See if this cat's going to give you ideas for a book here. Okay, so let's keep going here. Trixie is just going to assist me in this process. Or not. Get off the keyboard, Trixie. All right, pausing again. Jeez. Now, one thing I would like to bring up is even if you're writing a children's book, you need to remember that it's the parents that are buying those books. And I always like to include some humor that my parents are going to get. The kids probably aren't going to get. But I know when I would read to my kids, I would appreciate wit and creativity, and I would be more likely to search out another book by that author. Let me give you an example what I mean by some content that my parents are going to get, but the kids aren't going to get here. So here we have Sheep 6, You Got Your Leisure Suit, the one that has the parachute. And no this is a hot mess. No 4-year-old is going to know what a leisure suit is, and they're definitely not going to recognize the John Travolta pose that you see there, but a parent is going to get it, and it might make them giggle or might make them think about something, from whenever they were young. And they're going to appreciate that I took the time to try to entertain them as well in this story. So keep that in mind. Maybe add some humor or something in there that a parent is going to get. All right, I had a pause, and Trixie is now outside terrorizing small creatures. So let's keep going here. Let's talk about my drafting and editing process. I kind of showed you a little bit that I write ideas as they come. And when I finally feel like I have enough ideas for this beginning, this middle, and a big event and the end, then I start on perfecting my text. So you can see at the top here, this is all very rough text, but I started writing some official text at the top. So my adventure began on a long snowy day, so long that by noon all my games had been played. I was growing so bored there was nowhere to go. Outside I was bordered by 10 feet of snow. Right there I'd probably say I'm writing to kindergarten, first, second, third. And I'm just going to build my story. And sometimes I wrote down an idea. So eventually when I get to my story that we're starting to visit different places, then I'm going to use this idea right here. So we're going to end up tunneling to a 7-Eleven and maybe grabbing a Slurpee. So I'll put that idea in there and work on the rhyme. The reason why I have a table here, like you see, is that when I start to write and I'm trying to figure out the rhyme and the rhythm, the first time I do it, it's not very good. And so then I will write it a different way. Maybe I'll use 2 different rhyming words than what I used this first way. And then sometimes I write it a third way and write a fourth way. And eventually I come up with something that I feel is good. And when I figure out what I want for that section, that page, that stanza of my book, then I like to put it in the first column. So whenever you see this is the book that I wrote for the speech pathologist again, then my story just reads down. I'll go down here a little bit and you can see that this also leaves room, like whenever you start to envision some illustrations, which we'll get to that here in just a second, I think about some funny illustrations that go with my text. This is from the movie Cinderella. And I think about videos that I've watched with my son, and we laugh about how little kids are trying to put clothes on their animals. And so I capture some of those ideas and throw them in there because this is going to give me ideas whenever I go to illustrate. But I just want to show you where I have kind of written the text the two different ways here. And then eventually I decide which one I like better, or I write a third one. So, can you help dress Mahomie? I think his head got in a sleeve. Yeah, I don't like that. Let's look at option 2. Can you help dress Mahomie? His head is not where it should be. That one is much better. I would probably take option 2 and put it in my first column and take that one and put it over here. I don't like to delete things because you just never know whenever you need to go back and you're going to use something that you wrote down previously. And you can see now that this document has become an idea to record the best of my text. It goes in order from beginning to middle to end, and I have a place to put my illustrations as well. All right, let's move on to the next topic so I don't bore you too much. The illustrations. Let me show you my illustration document. I showed you that I was putting ideas in the document as I was typing the story, but let me show you what I do next for my illustrations. If there was one piece of advice I could give you, it is do not start on your illustrations until you have your text done and you lay out what text is going to be on a book spread. So that's what you're going to see right here is I know on page 26 and 27 in my book, so someone will open up, they're on page 26 and 27. This is the text that I'm going to have on those 2 pages. Now, the reason why you'll want to go ahead and figure out the pages that you're going to put your text on is Amazon. If you're going to publish a book, Amazon will not publish a book unless it's 24 pages. I wish I would have known that whenever I wrote my first book because it wasn't 24 pages. And to publish it, we had to come up with some extra filler pages. So this one is like I wrote that this was based on a true story. I needed more pages. I had to add a page. You can see how I filled a little bit in this book. You make a lot of mistakes on the first book that you write and publish. As a matter of fact, this is edition 2. So I wrote and I published edition 1, and then I even revised it from then and republished it as an edition 2 and fixed all those things that I didn't like in that first edition. Let's see. Okay, so going back to 24 pages. But if you want to sell a children's book manuscript or children's book to a big publisher, you have to go through a literary agent. And the rule is those children's books needs to be about 32 pages long. So you can see that in the Teacher's Lounge book that is currently being illustrated, I have exactly 32 pages. So you can spread out your text to get to 24 pages at least, but try to shoot for 32. And then once you know what text is going to be together on a page spread, then you can plan your illustrations. And in this document, I have room that you can see here, right here, that I'm going to put the notes for the illustrations that I think needs to go with this text that's on those pages. Once you get your ideas down for the different pages, you're going to find sometimes you won't have an idea for an illustration for a page. And that's why you want to read your story to other people and ask them what they see and record their ideas for illustrations as well. And I'll show you, this is just the beginning of, this document for the Teacher's Lounge, but let me show you what this document looks like now that we are in the illustration process. And you can see here's the text that's going to be on page 8. Here's going to be on page 9. And here's the ideas that we have to put together on those page spreads. Notice I like to put pictures in here. So when I'm thinking about a secret door, what do I picture that's cool about a secret door? And I'm going to put some of those ideas down. So when we actually start to illustrate that, I'll remember some of those cool things that I wanted to incorporate. You can see here that also as pages the illustrations develop, I do rough sketches of them. And eventually, I will do even a better sketch. One thing I want you to note is that when you start to do rough sketches, I want you to put where you think the text is going to go, and then you can design an illustration that's going to fit the space. So obviously on these pages, page 4 and page 5, I've got 4 stanzas that are going to go on there. So that's why I left those marks right there. When it comes to illustrations, I can't encourage you enough to go check out a bunch of children's books and look at the different illustrations that are done. Sometimes there's going to be illustrations that go across both pages. Sometimes illustrations are done in smaller illustrations, as you can see here, or these are each talking about different events. So you have separate illustrations. Except on some situations you're going to have illustrations that go all the way across. Watch out for the middle. And if you guys really do think that you're going to write a book and you want to publish it to Amazon, reach out to me, because I'm going to share with you some things that you definitely need to do and not do when it comes to illustrations. Let's see, what's my next thing that we need to talk about here? All right, so we plan our illustrations, all right? And again, don't do that until your text is done and you spaced it out on your different pages. And then do a better rough sketch of every page. So this is what my illustrator, they took this document, that has all these ideas on it, and they sketched out every single page of the book before we start to do any illustrations that contain a lot of detail. And what I did after I got this, I'll flip it around here, is I shared the illustrations and I shared the story. I read the story to other people and I said, what do you have questions about the illustrations? And we ended up reading this to my Eagle Time kids and they gave us all kinds of feedback. And there were some things about the illustrations that were confusing to the students. And I want to show you again, this is what we went with for the cover. But if you look back on this rough sketch, it's definitely different. And we changed things because students were like, why is there a trampoline on the front? And we don't understand how there's a ladder just laying here on the ground. And like, why is there a snake? It's not a snake. It's a ribbon that twirls. So yeah, we made some changes there and for the better. When you have those changes made and you are very sure, now it's time to do the really pretty illustrations with colors. And if you end up asking an illustrator to do illustrations for you and they create something that looks like this and it took them several hours to paint this, you don't want to go back in and be like, I really think that could we change this on this page? Because your illustrator is not going to want to do that. And they're going to charge you extra money. And if you ask that a lot of an illustrator, they won't want to work with you again. So make sure you guys are really clear on your text and your illustrations. And what I found even after I got the illustrations and the text is I'm still not done revising my text. There's some text that I went in and I changed it because what was drawn on that page, I felt like I need to connect some of the images with the words a little bit better. Let me give you an example of this one right here. So my illustrator did a great job. She pictured that the sheep are about ready to be counted. So it's bedtime, the sun is setting, and the sheep are getting in line because pretty soon they're going to have to jump the fence so they can be counted so our child can go to sleep. And see that sun right there? And it's getting dark. So some of this text was not my original text. I rewrote it to fit the image. So I have now the sheep are jumping prose, but they're nervous, and it shows. The sun is down. They form a line. The sheep coach says it's counting time. So it matches that illustration really well. All right. Well, I think I've given you enough to think about. And as I said, Share your stories with other people to get feedback before you guys do some official illustration and publishing. What was the most difficult part of writing my children's book? So I had it all done. I uploaded it into Amazon and they said, we'll let you know in 24 to 36 hours if your book is ready to be published. And odds are it's not going to be. And they're going to send you an email and says, you have errors on page 2, 7, 14, 21, and you need to fix those and resubmit. So you do that, you resubmit. They give you another message that says, we will review this. We will let you know in 24 to 36 hours, or actually it's 72. It's like 24 to 72 hours. They'll get back with you to let you know if your book is ready to be published or if there's more things that you need to fix. I'll give you examples of things that you'll need to fix. That when you set this up, they'll take a look at it, and if you haven't spaced your illustration over enough, if you haven't pulled your illustrations to the edge of their uploading program, and that's leaving a white line on the outside, they don't want to publish a bad product. So they're going to say, we're not going to publish it until you fix these errors. And so I thought I'd be published in one day, and it took revision after revision. And I think it took about 7 days to finally get this book to go live. And it's been very rewarding. I love sharing this process with students and maybe inspiring them. It is fun to chat with people about their ideas for books, meet new people in the process. It's exciting when you go to publish the book, like your heart is going to be racing. Every time you go to sign a book, to autograph a book, you get excited as well. And you get a little bit nervous because you don't want to misspell a name or write something that's, inaccurate or dumb when you sign the book and then you kind of ruin their book, right? So it's been very rewarding and very fun. I want people to be entertained by my books. I write books that are entertaining. They usually teach a lesson. I'm writing an informative book. But most important, I want to write a book that kids are going to like so much, they're going to ask to read it over and over, and they're going to want to buy more books that I write. My son was a very reluctant reader. He would not read unless a book was really funny. So I make sure that my books are really funny for kids out there that maybe don't like to read, but they do like to laugh. So good luck with your stories. Feel free to stop by my room. It's 427 in the Science Wing if you want to share some of your ideas, or if you want some assistance coming up with ideas for a beginning, a middle, and an end of your book. And thanks for listening, guys. Good luck.